turned on. And also the mic's on too. You see before you a woman who is not afraid of God, and God's been doing God's spiritual practice and therefore is no longer afraid of me. I'm kind of in a full circle moment. You know, the first wedding I ever performed was with Vaughn and Allison. And I like saying that out loud since they are still married. And that's very useful. We were in the woods somewhere, and it was quite exciting, and all I know is that he put on the music, and you know, they're both dancers. But for me, close up, I had never seen an over 6 foot tall dancer. So he put on, When a Man Loves. The legs went up to the sun, the arms out to the moon. Right? He danced his vows. Right. In the woods, in the forest, and she danced her vows, and then they came to the altar, and I think all we needed was amen, pass the basket. Their vows were in their bodies as well as in their minds and in their mouths, so the service was a fully orbed event in which we all did participate. And then I have my sweet beloved Reverend Keith, who I know you also love. And so in his life, matriculating through the university at Agape International Spiritual Center, I've just been there, and I got the great privilege of sometimes being his doula for certain and various classes. It wasn't that long ago that I yoo-hooed him to become a practitioner. Yoo-hoo! I yoo-hooed him when he graduated from the School of Ministry, and woo-hoo! And then I got to yoo-hoo, but full of tears, because recently he was just ordained. And so there's just and then Tyler, I didn't know that when Reverend Michael asked me to be the director for the Sunday night service, I didn't know he meant every service. You know, there's like 52 of those things. So every Sunday night I know where I'm going to be, and we have beautiful music on Sunday evening. And so for 3 weeks in a row, you and I have been loving God together through music. This is Tyler, and he was also a guest musician for the Sunday night services. So there's all of this, and then there's us, me being here in Orange County with you. I used to live in a place called Costa Mesa, across from the golf course in the Mediterranean Village. Over there for a long time. And let's see, Diana's here, I mean, just a lot. So, wow, here's how it goes. Somebody prayed for me. They had me on their minds. I'm using Southern. They took the time to pray for me. And I'm so glad they prayed. I'm so glad they prayed. I'm so glad they prayed for me. I'm gonna try that again. Somebody prayed for me. They had me on their minds. They took the time to pray for me. Yeah. And I'm so glad they prayed. I'm so glad they prayed. I'm so glad they prayed for me. But here's the verse that's really true. My mama prayed for me. Yeah. She had me on her mind. She took the time to pray for me. Church, and I'm so glad she prayed. I'm so glad. I'm so glad she prayed. I'm so glad she prayed for me. Now, gospel music is a kind of a standing thing. And then we ask the Lord to have thine own swing. So you sway with me. Step together, step together. What's happening here? It's not like this in the shower. Hey, somebody pray for me. Somebody pray for me. They had me on their mind. They took the time to pray for me. I'm so glad they prayed. And can you bring it down? I'm so glad they prayed. I'm so glad. I'm so glad they prayed for me. Sing with me, my mama. You might have had a mother, but I want you to have a mama. And if you ain't have a black mama, I'm for real. Ready? My mom. My mama prayed for me. She had me on her mind. She took the time to pray for me. I'm so glad. I'm so glad she prayed. I'm so glad she prayed. I'm so glad she prayed for me. In the language of Jesus, Aramaic, the word pray is shlotha. Shlotha. Try it. Shlotha. And it has to do with, it's a hunter's term. It's like Wile E. Coyote sent away to the Acme toy store and bought a prayer. He bought a trap. The term translates as trap. So a trap is something you put down on the ground, right? And you pry it open. Right? You pry it open, and then you wait for something to enter it. So you can imagine the shock of the people, the first listeners of Ishowa, hearing him use the term shlotha in regards to prayer. That is just so uniquely said. That what is it that we'll be waiting for after we open the trap? You know, I'm sure we're supposed to open that trap and shut this one. But what is it? God is a spirit. Wow, so I guess, and it's omnipotent and it knows everything. So we've laid a trap for that which knows what there is, and it's so sweet and it's so kind that it would pretend like it doesn't know it's there. The trap. You know, God, if I could whistle. To step in there, and then something would slam shut around the ankle of the presence of God, right? And there it would be, your omniscient, omnipresent love would be caught in your consciousness. Not bad, huh? That's good. That's a long story. So when I'm saying that my mother prayed for me, this is huge. It meant that she set a trap for God, for me, which has no expiration date. And also, just so you know, I'm contagious. So what's not expired in me is also not expired in you. You with me so far? Yeah. So I'm just saying that when I get to say anything with an amazing band, I almost think I'm a professor now. Then I'm just saying that there is an opening, of prayer. Prayer is an opening. I become a concave space into which I become a sacred empty. And in this teaching, we know that the universe affords a vacuum, an empty. So if you create a sacred empty, it's rushing in to fill itself, fill you with itself. My prayer, I'm setting a trap for God. And it's a good daggone thing, too. And look, when he came to me, I felt quite spiritually strong at the time. But there's certain subjects that can make you mess up. You know, like doubt yourself. Am I the Lone Ranger? Okay. Okay, so he came to me and he said, I'd like to borrow some money. See, I could feel the crazy rising. But I was trying to be generous, Rev. So I said, how much? They said a lot. And eventually I handed that money over several times. And the promise, of course, is that when I get my big check, I didn't see any danger. And when the big check comes from the insurance company, I'll give it back to you. But the big check, it came and went, and I never received not even one phone call. I didn't even get $5 in the mail. Nobody stuck nothing in my mailbox. And that person proceeded to have their own life and say nothing to me. And even though that had occurred, I hope you've done this before, or hope you hadn't. Even though that person was less than wonderful to me, when they came and asked for some more money, I gave that money. And I said, now you're keeping track, right? You got yourself a little journal and you're writing down the stuff I'm giving you. Well, it turned out that he was going to only write down the stuff he felt was the borrowed, and some of the money I gave was because I'm entitled to it. So his figures and my figures don't match. I'm saying this because it's a good thing my mama prayed for me, because if I wasn't a praying woman, I don't know, I had all kinds of beautiful words I wanted to say to that person, but mostly they had broke, and I wanted to say all those words in defense of my broken heart. I had trusted someone with the substance of my life, and they had said, given their word to me, and I believed it, and then I so believed it that the injury that was unfinished in me, like I was becoming a woman who was going over my own boundaries. So I was in a give too much space where I was starting to feel less than elegant. And so that continued and continued and continued till double digits. And I started sleeping, I started tossing and turning. Have you ever done that, like you've gone too far with yourself? And I felt like Lurch. I'm so glad you know who Lurch is, and you young people. They'll tell you later. Yes. And one day, like you, I knew that I needed to take this to my practitioner, or at least I needed to take it to my church, the sacred gathering, and I needed to spiritually put the energy of my broken heart onto the altar of transformation in consciousness. That on this sacred location called the altar, I could take everything there, even that which I felt was broken and could not figure out how to repair. I felt quite Humpty Dumpty. She sat on a wall and she fell, and I could not figure out how to put any of the pieces together. Not only that, I couldn't even find all the pieces. They had scattered, you know. I was in shards. So one morning, I get to go to Agape. I know it's third service, and I go there, and I think God should have been eavesdropping on my prayers. I had set a trap, hadn't I? But I had to shut mine. I couldn't hear. That's right. Nice and gospel. And I go there, and there's a certain chair. He knows this. There's a certain chair I always sit in on third service. And some other folk, had sat down in my chair and looked like they wasn't about to get up and let me have it. And I was senior to them, right? And you know, they gave me one of those childhood things. You just go on down there and sit down in them empty chairs down there. That's not the same as getting the finger, that's 4 fingers. I didn't know what to do with myself, right? And so I made my way down there and sat there. I had all kinds of feelings. a constellation of feelings, a universe of feelings. I sit there, and then we have honored guests who are coming that day, but I don't know it. And there's two chairs, it's a husband and wife, and it's the husband and wife, and they sit beside me. He looks deeply familiar, and it does turn out to be Martin Luther King III. So Dr. King's son is sitting to my right. You go on down there. And I get down there, and I'm sitting beside Dr. King's son, who I had the joy of watching grow up over years. Right, and now here he is, an ordained minister as well, and his bride. And this is just amazing that I am there. And I start to feel some peace about what I thought I needed to put on the altar. I wasn't fully sure. And the service continues, and there's some part of the service where we are going to touch and hold each other's hand. So I'm thinking, history's coming in my direction because I see his hand moving. Great, and his hand comes over and holds my hand, and the whole transforming movement of the United States, why we're here, why we can be here, is in my right hand. And I heard that song, somebody prayed for me, my mama. The unexpired prayers of my mama have prayed for me. And I'm sitting there, and maybe the rev has begun. I am less than clear because I'm holding hands. Oh, and not only that, we have to turn to our person. Right? Don't forget, the folks down here, they say, you go on down there and sit. And then when they realize after he's been introduced that they didn't send me right to the king house. Yeah. And we have to turn to each other, and we say beautiful things like, I see the presence of God upon you, I see that you are the light. We say these things back and forth to each other, and then the Reverend Michael says, and then I want you to just give them a blessing. I don't know if I can actually stand to have a blessing from Dr. King III, just all this history there, and he just says, I see that you are a woman of God, and whatever it is you're going through, you need to know it's a through. This ain't your camping zone. And then me being raised in the church, I'm a good girl from the church. I remembered what to say, the formal thing to say when someone has spoken what that would have been called a word over your life, has spoken a prophecy, has spoken a goodness over your life. That's the phrase, that's kind of the idiom, spoken over my life. Then the thing you do is you say, I received that. But I did it in Southern. I received that. And he said, ooh, you still know, right? Because I'm speaking something old church, right? His daddy's generation, right? Which could be mine. But I'm like Reverend Michael, we just can't keep up with her age. I lie about my age so much, and my family lies about their age so much, that when my mother was on her deathbed, I was 4 years older than her. And so he says this, I say, I received that. He says, ooh, you remember. And then we're sitting there in the stillness, or I'm in the stillness, sitting there. And then I hear, you're gonna have to forgive this. And I go, I can't. You're gonna have to forgive it. You're gonna have to forgive it. I can't, Lord. Then you gotta take to the altar what you can't forgive, then that goes on the altar too. I can't forgive it. But the request was, you need to forgive the debt. There's that Semitic prayer, forgive us our trespasses, forgive us our debts. And I was being asked by my own spirit to take this double-digit thing and place it on the altar and cause the natural and the super, or the supernatural, to interrupt, to intervene, and touch this situation and have it resolve itself in a way that only the divine can resolve a thing like this. Also, I had to become willing to have the knot in my heart unfurl, and the trap that I had set, I needed to pry that tightness open so that something could enter. I needed to become the sacred, empty, the concave place by which the presence of God that's also in this room could pour itself in me. I needed to forgive the unforgivable. I just felt like this was I just can't. And I enjoy a good unforgivable. I enjoy it. Why? Because as long as I got something to hold, then that's my story about not living the life God told me to live. So I got some conditions upon it. Like as soon as you have the giraffe come in and do this special magical stuff, right? Like my unforgiveness was like a lodestone around my neck, or under house arrest, the bracelet would just buzz when you just get so many feet away into the joy and goodness, which is actually your destiny, right? It would buzz and I would retract and contract and continue to live a too small life. As long as I was in unforgiveness, as long as there was something that could happen at me, life was coming at me, I was its victim, then I was in prison. Which one of us needed the forgiveness? I'm under house arrest and can't live the life I'm called to live. I hope none of you really know what I mean. And so there I was, living in so much, I had secret joy. You see, once this person became unforgivable, then I built my whole life around the mistake they had made in my direction. Am I saying that well? It's like it was like I was pronounced, some kind of hurt was on me, and for the rest of my days, I thought I would have to live as the evidence that they hadn't treated me well. My life would be the evidence that they had not treated me well, which would mean I could only have so much joy because I don't want them to know that I'm having joy when they owe me. Right? Am I saying this well? It's like I set my life up so that I could only live so large a life because I was thinking that, as long as I could, I should just make sure that the way I was punishing them, was to have a couple of sips of resentment. How's
that taste?
It's delicious. You got to know that the temptation that you're tempted with smells doggone good. You're not tempted with something you wouldn't want. You're tempted right in the zone, baby. And the nice thing about this delicious drink, it's better than a smoothie, right? It really quenches the thirst. It satisfies my drunkenness because I love to get drunk on I'm right. I got 5 minutes? Oh, Lord. But here's where we're going. We're flying now. I need for you to put down your sippy cup. Resentment means I'm just rehashing the story, sending it round and round. I resent what it meant. I resent what it meant. I got full of resentments. And I want you to know that there is a power on your life greater than you know that can forgive you both. I want to tell you, my grandma said, sometimes, baby, they can't pay the bill. Sometimes they can't pay the bill. Sometimes people acted out near you and they cannot fix it. So you're going to have to give it over to a higher power, something more than me. I have to lay it down. But when I lay it down, I have to also lay down my reason for not living my calling. I have to lay down my excuses for it. I have to become clean and have a fresh yes. There's a little herb garden I have in the backyard, and I grow yeses. I grow a fresh yes. I don't use the yes I had yesterday. I use the yes of today. It's so fragrant and delicious, and it satisfies different than resentment. I want you to know that my favorite forgiveness story in the Bible is that when the woman is taken in adultery. There's a woman, it says idiomatically, she's taken in adultery. That's how it is in King James. Have you heard of this? She's taken in adultery. Taken in adultery is an idiomatic phrase which means she's pregnant and showing. That's how they know. And the punishment for such a thing as that, to be pregnant, well, that and showing, and not be attached to the right person, the right male, is that she would be stoned to death. And so they've drug her out to the courtyard. It's set up, Brian, to trick Jesus. They're going to set him up with a public idea to see what he's going to say, what you got to say about that. Right? Where's your teaching now? Because the law says we got to stone her to death. In the culture, whoever gets to throw, the person with the highest esteem, the highest political space, the richest family in a stoning, throws the first one. You couldn't really know that without the Semitic approach. So when Jesus has her out there, she's, he just said, what you gonna do about it? What you gonna do about it? And he said, oh, no problem. Whoever ain't never made a mistake, you get to throw the first rock. You throw the first one. You who ain't never had a problem, ain't never slipped and slid, never done that, then you get the privilege of throwing the first one. It'll be your privilege because you ain't never made a boo-boo. Right? And so there is this woman on the ground, weeping, sweaty, a mess, and her folk are all around her, and they already have these stones. They're not small river rocks. And every one of them eventually lays it down because they know that there's no one in the crowd who's never made a boo-boo, who hasn't been gangly and awkward in the presence of another person. And so they put their stones down, and everybody's gone. And there she is weeping, and he says, woman, Ata, where are your accusers? Are there any accusers? And she goes, no, my sir, no, sir. She said, no, sir. There aren't any. And then he says this amazing thing, which I was going to have to do sitting in the chair at Agape. I was going to have to forgive the debt. I was going to have to say, shall I throw the first stone? Is it me? Can I throw the first stone at this person? Or can I wipe the slate clean? Can I shwak, which is the word for forgive, which means to untie, unbound, unhook, unleash. Would I unleash her life, his life from mine? Can we have different lives now, different trajectories of a life? Can I shwak it? And the answer is yes, because I wanted an obvious life in God. I wanted to be someone who was stained to the bone with love. It's going to be really stained. The indelible mark with a Sharpie on my bones. My presence. She mine. I'm hers. And in that day, I got to forgive the debt. It felt unforgivable. There was something else to be had called freedom. And that would mean I would have to risk being a minister I had never been. There's a kind of minister I could be if I'm shackled. There's a woman you can be shackled. There's a man you can be shackled. But there's a whole other man. There's a whole other woman. If you is free, if you are free, then you have freedom to make choices that weren't there. I have already been given the 5-minute cue, and I just want to tell 2 more things. The last 2 things, the thing I brought also for you about forgiving the unforgivable, because only God can pay the debt. You see, when I laid it on the altar, then it could get transformed into prosperity and abundance for all of us. I would pray for that person too, just because they couldn't face me anymore. So, one more thing I brought. I wanted you to know that sometimes the universe, God, love is going to call you suddenly to live a life you've never lived before. It's way bigger than the one you planned. And sometimes it's going to ask you to leave Egypt, leave your captivity really, really fast. It's going to ask you to leave and pack up all your stuff. And even though you made a good loaf of sourdough bread and it's rising on the stove, the tea towel over it, right, it's rising, you're not going to have time for it to rise. You're going to take the bread in the pan, still kind of flat, right? And you're going to have to take it even though it has not been leavened. You're just going to have to go to